So now that we're able to load and display those chat messages here, it's time to make sure that they're styled properly and that we, for example, also display the user's image and username next to them. And I want to start with some general list styling here. On this list view here, it, for example, would look a bit nicer if we would add some padding. And thankfully, the list view builder constructor function supports a padding parameter. For that here, we can then create such a edge insets object using the only constructor function again to set specific paddings for the different directions. And here I want to set a bottom padding of 40 to have quite some spacing between the list of messages and this new message input area. And to the left and right, I want to have a padding of 13. And of course, as always, definitely feel free to tweak those values to your liking. Now, one other thing which is quite important, which I want to do here, is I want to set the reverse parameter to true. Now, what does this parameter do? If we save it, you can see that now the messages are pushed to the bottom. In the end, the entire list is reversed, and instead of going from top to bottom, it now goes from bottom to top. Now, of course, I still want to make sure that my latest message, which in this case would be this one here, is at the bottom of that list though. And to make sure that that's the case, we can use this order by method again to order these chat messages in a different way. Instead of ordering them in ascending order, we can order them in descending order by setting this to true. And combined with that reversed list, which I did do to make sure that it starts at the bottom, we will now have the correct output again if we save this. And we have the latest message at the bottom, but now the overall list is pushed down to the bottom. Now, of course, these list messages also should look a bit nicer. Instead of just displaying a text widget for every message, I want to in the end display a chat bubble that contains the message combined with some extra metadata next to it. And for that, attached you find the message bubble.dart file, this file here, which contains all the widgets and all the styling you need to display such a chat bubble. Now, it's a lot of code in there, but it does not contain any features we wouldn't have covered before in this course. And therefore, to not waste your time, we're not going to build it from scratch together. Instead, I'm just providing this finished widget to you, and you find a lot of comments in that widget that explain the different main parts and main settings that make up this overall custom widget. In the end here, we're just rendering a chat bubble, which contains the chat message, and depending on whether it's the first message of a user in a sequence of messages or not, it will also output the user's image and also the username next to the chat message. Now for that, this message bubble offers two constructor functions, first and next, which should be called depending on whether it's the first message in a sequence of messages by the same user or some other message, not the first message of the same user. And then we must provide the user image, username, message, and whether that user is the logged in user, because the messages of the logged in user should also be displayed in a slightly different way. So with that widget added here in chat messages Dart, we can use this widget in our builder method instead of displaying such a text widget, because instead of doing that in this builder method here, we can now get hold of that chat message by using the loaded messages for a given index, as you learned, and then they are calling data. And that gives us this document map, which in the end contains all that metadata that belongs to a message and the message itself. And now for every message that will be output, I also want to take a look at the next message in line, if there is any, to see if that next message is by the same user or not. Because, as mentioned a couple of seconds ago, that will be some important information for displaying this message bubble widget correctly. So therefore, we also want to have a look at the next chat message, and we can get that look by using this index here of the current chat message and adding one to it, which will then be the index of the next chat message. And we want to check if index plus 1 is still smaller than loaded messages dot length, because if it's not smaller, it means we're trying to look at a message that doesn't exist. We're trying to exceed the boundaries of our list of loaded messages. But if it is smaller, we know that there is a next chat message in line, that this is not the last chat message here. And in that case here, if there is a next message, we will get hold of it by using loaded messages for index plus 1. Alternatively, we'll yield null, we'll return null. So next chat message is either null if there is no next chat message, or it is that next chat message in line. Now with that next chat message loaded here as well, we can then get the current message username by using our chat message. So this chat message here, which is loaded for the currently displayed index. And there we can access the username key, because in the end, for every chat message, we are storing the username. But we can also take a look at the next message username to see if that next message will be from the same user. And for that, we can use the next chat message. And if that's not equal to null, we can access next chat message username. Alternatively, we return null. If there is no next chat message, then we set next message username to null. And with that, we could then compare these usernames. Now, theoretically, two users could have the same usernames though. Therefore, we might instead want to use the user IDs, so the current message user ID and the next message user ID. And conveniently, I'm also storing those user IDs along with the text that makes up a message. And therefore, we can retrieve those user IDs here by using that user ID key here. And that then will give us a unique identification criteria. And we can then add one last utility variable here that could be named next user is same. And that should be true if the next message user ID is equal to the current message user ID. So with that, we're simply checking whether the next message is from the same user as the currently rendered message here. And that will only be important for outputting the message bubble correctly, to get the styling of that bubble right by using the right constructor function of this message bubble widget. Because now we can add a if check and check if the next user is the same. And if that's the case, so if the user is the same as the current user, we want to return message bubble next, because we have an ongoing sequence of messages from the same user. In that case, we want to output chat message text here as a message text. And we need to find out whether this user for whom we're outputting this message is the currently logged in user. And to find out whether that's the case, we can go back to the beginning of this build method maybe, because we don't need to get information about the currently logged in user for every message that we're outputting. Doing this once when we're starting to output the overall list is enough. And here we can get the authenticated user by using Firebase auth instance current user, as you learned. And current user could be null, but here it won't be because, again, we're in a part of the app where only logged in users have access to. So that's our authenticated user. And down here, where we're outputting the chat messages, we can therefore then use this authenticated user to get this user's ID and compare this to the current message user ID. And if that's equal, we know that the currently logged in user is the user who created this message, and then isMe should be set to true to change some style settings in this message bubble widget. Again, you can dive into the message bubble widget and take a look at all these widgets to understand which settings are changed based on which parameters. For example, where this isMe parameter is being used. Now, of course, we also have to cover the case that the next user is not the same, so the else case here. And in that case, I want to return message bubble first, because it's the first time that we're outputting a message for the given user. And in that case, we of course also still provide the text, and we still provide the information about whether this is the logged in user or not. But in addition, we also need to provide a user image and the username. And that can be done by using chat message and then their username, and of course also chat message, and then the image is stored under user image in my case here. So that's the key, this key here, that I want to use for extracting that image, like this. Now with that, I just noticed that I mixed this up. So of course, that's the user image, that's the username. But with that, if I save this all and reload, I now got the username here above my messages, and then next to my messages, I also got the image that belongs to this user. And now if I do log in with another user or create a new user here, which I'll name Maximilian, so that's a different username than what I had before, and I add a different image here, maybe of that TV here on this emulator, and I sign up, I now see these messages here to the left because now they belong to a different user. But if I enter my message here, it shows up on the right with my image. And if I enter more messages here, they show up in the same sequence. So now with all of that, we have this app where users can log in, can view messages and also send messages, and where we then also display those messages on this screen. Of course, definitely feel free to tweak the look of this app if you want to. For this section here, the last big feature that should be added are push notifications though.